I'd like to introduce our next speaker. I think of Tina as a friend. Tina has spoken here before. She's coming back. She's going to give us an update, but I get the chance to talk to Tina all the time. One of the smartest young ladies I've had the opportunity to be around. Tina Rameriz, come on up and tell us what's going on with the Hardwired.
Well, I am on page 29, so you can go ahead and turn to that too if you want. Well, the last time I was here, as Jim mentioned, I was about 7 months pregnant and had just returned from Iraq. And in case you're wondering why a pregnant woman would go to a godforsaken, war-torn country like Iraq, I want to share a little bit about the people I met and then the vision for Hardwired. On the screen is a woman named Aida. Aida's 3-year-old daughter, Christina, was taken from her when ISIS came into their village and decided that she would have to flee, but that the 3-year-old daughter would remain with them as a child bride. This is Bazi. She was interviewed by Christiana Amanpour when we brought her to the U.S. last year. She was bought for $40 by an American that had enslaved her, that had gone to join ISIS last year. As a mother or a father, which many of you are in here, maybe a sister or a brother, it would be hard to imagine this happening to any of our relatives. For me, it would be hard to imagine this happening to my daughter. And it would be hard to know what we would do if it did, which is the place that many people in Iraq are in today. God did not create us to live under such oppression. He hardwired each one of us to be free to worship him. And that is what Hardwired does. Around the world, we make it possible for more people to experience religious freedom. And I'm going to share how we do that. The stories that I just shared are important because they represent 3 out of every 4 people in the world. And many of these people are your brothers and sisters. They're Christians. That's 5.3 billion people, in case you wanted to know the number. It's been 2 years since ISIS attacked these villages in northern Iraq and these people simply because of their faith. But now, and in the last 2 years that I've been here, I'm here to share that we've been able to raise up 60 leaders in Iraq who are defending the religious freedom of these Yazidis, these Muslims, these Christians, every human being that has been attacked by them. That is a praise. I'm switching around a little bit because I altered my message. I apologize. Just go with me. This is Dr. Ahmed. Dr. Ahmed is one of those 60 leaders. He's important because he's a judge, or he was a judge in Mosul. And he had to flee, but his entire family were held behind and imprisoned by ISIS. He's in line to be on the Supreme Court in Baghdad, and he will be in charge of judging the terrorists after the war ends and the violence ends. After our training, ISIS sent him a photo of his youngest brother being beheaded. And we met him a second time. We asked him what he would do. It was a warning. But rather than backing down, Dr. Ahmed became an even stronger advocate for the religious freedom of Christians and many others. Why did he do it? He did it because it reminded him of the suffering that awaited every Iraqi, regardless of their religion, if they did not safeguard this freedom for everyone. I want you to take a moment and imagine a Muslim risking his life to defend your freedom. And yet in much of the world, Christians like you are a minority, and they depend on people like this, standing up and risking their lives to save them. And Hardwired is training them to do that. Our trainees are not only influencing the society, but they're changing laws as well. As you know, there are many groups in the United States that are defending religious freedom, but there are none, 0, around the rest of the world. But without local advocates defending this freedom, we will always be responding to crises like Iraq, leading from behind. You're businessmen, and you know that this is not a sustainable solution. Since I was last year, we've been able to train hundreds of people in Sudan, And around the world, we've trained teachers all over the Middle East. For many of them, this is the first time that their schools, that their leaders are hearing about religious freedom and having advocates that will defend it. The first time that students in the Middle East are learning how to deal with the intolerance that they're facing when it comes to religious extremism. And this is creating a ripple effect throughout the society. We've made many significant inroads, but there are many challenges. As I mentioned, 3 out of 4 people in the world are facing religious oppression. That means there's a lot of work to still do. And one of the things that Hardwired's trying to do is build our capacity to respond immediately with local leaders when these crises arise. And that's where you come in. You are here because you care about the Great Commission. But how can we share Christ's love in a world where 3 out of every 4 people that we reach will never have the freedom to live it out like you do and I do here? And chances are that many of the ministries that you support are in countries just like this. And I know this for a fact because after the last time I spoke here, I was involved with many of the Barnabas leaders, helping them get people out of prison. Pastors that you're supporting, ministry leaders you're supporting, getting you visas into different countries for your operations. And the congressman is going to speak in a little bit, help me with that. So you can thank him when he comes up here. And as business leaders, you understand the importance of long-term investments. We have spent $2 trillion in Iraq, and yet we have no long-term plan for victory. Hardwired spent over a little under $200,000 there in 1 year. We trained 60 leaders who for the first time are training other leaders in their society to defend religious freedom, and there's hope for those communities for the first time in Iraq's history. That is a drop in the bucket. And if you're a mathematician, you can figure out the statistics on that. The situation in Iraq is a perfect example of what happens in countries where religious oppression runs rampant. They risk destabilizing the entire world. San Bernardino is not far from here. This is not something that's across the world. It's something that we have experienced right here at home. And we know the dangers of extremism when we do not address it at its root. And that's what Hardwired does in the countries where it's fomenting so that we don't have to address it here. I want to share what the judge told me when I met with him that second time. He said, Tina, if everyone in our country would go through this training, our country would look different. That's the difference that Hardwired wants to see everywhere in the world. And Barnabas members can be a part of making that possible. Many of you already have. And so I want to honor one Barnabas couple that has been an immense support to Hardwired and who I want to multiply here today. So Joy and Peter, will you just stand up and raise your hands so that everybody can see you and just thank you? Because this couple, and I get teary-eyed thinking of it, this couple has prayed tirelessly for Hardwired since I was here 2 years ago, on their knees in many ways. We brought Bazi, the young Yazidi girl that was held by the American, to the U.S. She testified in Congress. The congressman that's going to speak helped us get that done. He introduced legislation, and through her testimony, we were able to pass sanctions and other things that helped stop ISIS in Iraq. This couple invited her to their home in Santa Barbara and inspired a movement amongst their family and friends that got to hear firsthand from Bazi and be encouraged by her story and wanted to help do something to protect her and the others that are still being held by ISIS or that have been rescued and are living in northern Iraq. That's what Barnabas does. That's the Barnabas difference. That's pretty awesome. We would love to inspire a similar movement here in Orange County, but that means we need at least 5 of you that would be willing to do what Joy and Peter have done with their life. And so, as I conclude, the one thing I want you to do as you look at your paper, you're on page 29, is I want you to consider whether God is calling you to be somebody like Joy and Peter for Orange County that will help us invite their friends and families together for a dessert dinner and inspire a movement here in Orange County for religious freedom. At the end of that page, there's a survey. I want to understand your heart. And so I am asking every single person in here to start filling out that survey, and I'm going to give you a few seconds to do that, because your response is critical for us to be able to serve you better. I'm just going to pause so you can go ahead and do that. As I conclude, I mentioned the young woman, Bazi, and Hardwired is launching a campaign to help other girls like her that are stuck in northern Iraq. And you can indicate on your response form if you want to become a part of that. But one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to provide support for the girls that have escaped from ISIS and that have nothing. But through that campaign, we're going to send them a booklet on their rights. And that booklet, we will also send, this one is in Arabic, to everyone who supports this work. This is all about religious freedom. How many of you have ever had a hard time having a conversation about religious freedom with somebody that maybe isn't a Christian here? This will open a door to that conversation, because this is something that every American should be concerned about. So I hope that as you fill out your response form, you'll indicate how you can join us, whether it's by being one of those 5 or joining our campaign. We all want to live in a safer world, but we'll never be safe if religious oppression continues to grow. I've shared a way that you can help us invest in those long-term sustainable solutions, and I hope that you'll join me today. Thank you.
Let me just pray for Tina. Father, I think most of us, when we think of religious freedom, it's a tough concept for us, Lord, because you've spoiled us. We live in a country where we have it. But Lord, that may not be for that long. So I pray, Lord, that there be people here that would just have a heart to come alongside Tina, to help her, to help Hardwired, to make sure that people all over this world have the freedom to choose. And Lord, our hope would be that they would choose you. Mm-hmm. So Father, we just thank you. Give Tina all the resources, all the help that she needs. We just lift this up to you in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Jim.
Make sure you fill that survey out. I want you to know that I had Susie do it, so there you go.